Hey everyone, it is Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. This is Sleepy Vlog number 91. I don't do my sleepy vlogs too often anymore. I should do them more often. I originally got the idea from a comic book mom, probably 9.5 years ago. Anyone remember a comic book mom, Audrey? She used to seem to me one of the core participants in the YouTube comic book community way back when. But anyway, she did these things she called vlogs, and up to that point, my videos were just little messages in a bottle thrown out to the rest of the community. And then the idea of the vlog was, and maybe then I started doing some comic book reviews. And then the idea of a vlog was just throw together a bunch of different thoughts you had that week and talk about them for a while. Usually a longer video and less organized or multi-parted. I don't know if Comic Book Mom's ones were less organized, and I know other people did them too. Oddfellow Thoughts and Ghost Critic, I believe. Anyways, other people did them too. It's all just a matter of words, right? Everything I do on this channel is a vlog, but I call a vlog where I throw together a bunch of odd bits and pieces. And this past week, I decided not to do a comic book countdown, and I thought, well, I'll just do a sleepy vlog, talk about a bunch of things, and to some extent talk about comic books that I've read. So I got like 17 or 18 comics last week, and then I got at least 16 comics this week, and I've just fallen so far behind. It's a mistake to get so many comics, basically. But the nice thing about a comic book mom, Audrey, was that she kind of let you into her home. We saw her kids, we saw her husband, who was also a comic book fan, and it just felt like you were in the middle of everyday life. And I loved that feeling. That was exactly what I liked about the comic book community. Now, my daughter, who chose the name Quacking Duck back when she was 4 for her video name, appears less and less and less as she's become a teenager. She's 13 now, and she just doesn't feel as well. She doesn't feel she reads that many comics, although I think she does, really, like on webtoons and stuff. And then we still sometimes read comics at bedtime together. And she doesn't want to do things Dad's way. She never really did, but now she really doesn't want to do things Dad's way, which is very normal for a 13-year-old. But Mrs. Sleepy, my wife, has probably never appeared on a video, maybe flashing by in the background once somewhere, or maybe her voice from off stage may have appeared once or twice. She's just not at all, she's not interested in being on YouTube, and she's not at all interested in comics. She puts up with it, and with plenty of good humor and everything. So I have never mentioned what my wife currently does for a living, but I thought I would mention it now, because one of the things she's working on I'm pretty excited about. So she comes from a background in radio and news, and she is currently one of my problems and reason why I didn't do the countdown or read all my comics was asthma. I'm still battling that a bit. But so she comes from that background, but she works now mostly as a freelance podcast editor and sometimes involved in other aspects of production and recording of podcasts. And they're mostly kind of corporate podcasts, like for Intel and certain banks in the area and for health insurance organizations and stuff. Very dry stuff, but occasionally more interesting things. And lately, a kind of acquaintance from my daughter's elementary school started a podcast, and he and his co-host wanted to do it really professionally, so they hired my wife to do the editing. And I love this podcast, so I wanted to tell you all about it, just in case any of you guys have interests in common. I find it actually a little bit of a hard podcast to explain, but it's called Too Much Effing Perspective. And effing is spelled Effing. But that's not exactly how they say it in the movie Spinal Tap, which is the inspiration of this podcast. There's a scene where the three main guys of Spinal Tap go visit Elvis's grave. And one guy says it gives you a lot of perspective, and the other one says, too much effing perspective. And that is the feeling that these two hosts get, like the major point for them of Spinal Tap, because they were both in rock bands. And then one of them became a road manager for a lot of well-known rock bands, like suddenly blanked their name. His less well-known ones include PJ Harvey and the Bodines, and what's his really famous one? Now I can't remember. It'll come back to me. But so they interview people in bands about their experience through the lens of the whole Spinal Tap idea, where you have all these Spinal Tap moments when you're on tour. Someone's messaging me. It's Sam from Sam's Tangled Web, but unfortunately I'll be at an appointment when he's doing his show. So let's see. This is really in the middle of life here. So this is what the podcast looks like. Too Much Effing Perspective. And this is the issue where they interview the two guitarists from Sleater-Kinney, and who live here in Portland. But they interview all kinds of people. Radiohead was the really big band that he had been a road manager for, a tour manager for. They've interviewed just most recently the leader of the Mekons. They've interviewed a jazz singer named Tierney Sutton, Fountains of Wayne guitarist Jody Porter, Pixies guitarist Joey Santiago, who my wife said Joey Santiago had the best audio setups, and she's the audio editor and really kind of the producer of getting the audio right. She was really glad he had all the right setup. Drive-By Truckers, they interview two members of that. They interview Dandy Warhol's Zia McCabe, a guy who played drums with Morrissey, a guy who's the current drummer with Styx and has played with other people. So it's really cool because they all have this background. They bring in their own experiences on the road and weird rock and roll moments, and then they encourage the people they're interviewing to talk about that. And often it's a view into the whole life of people in these rock bands that have lasted a long time. So I really love this podcast. I hope it's successful. Not because my wife needs the money. She actually has too much work. Part of me hopes this podcast will go under so that she'll be less busy, because she already had too much work before she even took this one on. So, but anyway, it's really cool, and she really likes her work. So check it out. Check out Too Much Effing Perspective if you have any interest in rock and roll. Interestingly, Spinal Tap is one of my wife's all-time favorite movies. I think it's hilarious too, but I didn't think of it as... I do love the movie, but until getting together with my wife, I never thought about whether it was one of the greatest movies of all time or anything like that. Yeah. And so to these people in rock bands, Spinal Tap really is like the movie that shows all the pains and difficulties of their life on the road, in bands, trying to keep things together. So, and that was kind of a revelation to me. I always viewed it as just a joke on these really dumb hard rock bands, which in a way it also is. But I guess it just rings true to all kinds of longtime musical and traveling performers. So, let me show you from the books I read now that came out now 2 Wednesdays ago. my two favorites were Echolands, which actually was by far my biggest favorite. The art is like, I don't know, it's a comic art fan, illustration art fan's sort of endless orgasm of pleasure. The beautiful illustrations, but also the amazing layouts and storytelling, the amazing amount of creativity and imagination that goes into each 2-page spread. We're coming to see more and more what kind of world J.H. Williams and Hayden Blackman have created here, which really is a world like where all kinds of fictional pulp and other kinds of things, comic book things and movie things and everything all come together, and fairy tales. So just, it's like reveling, it's like a stew, a rich stew of storytelling tropes and storytelling characters. And really surprised me but delighted me when a character showed up who looks like a classic Jack Kirby character. His name is Romulus in this comic, but he evokes kind of Icarus from the Eternals, and Captain Victory, and maybe a little bit of Orion. And he's kind of the king of the pirates, which is kind of interesting. I'm not sure why they chose him to be that. But, some of his henchmen are from different horror movies. And, like there's Frankenstein, there's a vampire from some other kind of horror setting, there's a werewolf. As part of our Red Riding Hood's gang is also a like an elf, some kind of cartoon character. I kind of take this, I'm not sure what that's a reference to, but I'm thinking of it as maybe a kind of Milton Caniff character, perhaps. There we've got kind of our ethereal elf. We've got our kind of gothic vampire lady. I'm not sure whether her boyfriend, I can't remember his name right now, is a reference to something else. But I've gone from thinking I would buy just one of the raw cut black and white editions to realizing I have to buy every single one. And then I'll buy if there's a massive hardback later. But with these double page spreads, the single issue reading experience is definitely a really exciting part of it. So it tastes vary, of course, but I just love this comic and want to recommend it to everybody. And now it's interesting, at the comic book store, it's the same exact size as a comic, even though it looks thinner when you look at it because it's sideways. But at the comic book store, where their extra issues were hanging out on their rack, they were kind of flopping over a little. They were curling, which was really sad to me. So they really ideally should be displayed this way if comic book stores can afford the space. Because a normal comic book is held up to some degree by its spine, but this one, put this way, it has no spine holding it up. So that's unfortunate. My other big favorite was but as much as I love Usagi, the Echolands way outstripped it, I'm afraid. But this was another very good issue in, I think, a 3-part story. And 3-part stories are a good length for me. I don't know what went wrong with the coloring here. It's by a different colorist, and I don't know. It just doesn't capture for me the fun of a Usagi comic. And certainly, if you want to pop out on the racks, which I guess maybe isn't important anymore, having this dark brown kind of cover is not going to hack it. But luckily, on the inside, we get a story that is both simple and just has those layers of complexity, just like I like my Usagi Yojimbo, with kind of people being trapped between criminal groups and the law and other criminal groups, and I don't know, very cool. So I love those, and most of the books I read that past week were quite good, but maybe I'll talk about them in a second. So I also have been spending a lot of time, which kind of ties in with the Too Much Effing Perspective, a lot of time listening to the audiobook by Rob Halford called Confess, and I finally finished it. And I kind of sometimes am in love with these celebrity biographies or autobiographies if they're done well, and this one's done extremely well and has the extra layer of his whole trying to deal with his identity and staying in the closet for the sake of his band and all that. But it is interesting by the time you get to, and it was read by Rob Halford, who did a fantastic job reading his own book. When you get to the end of someone's biography that covers, about 68 or 69 years of his life, I feel kind of exhausted. I feel like I've lived too much of someone else's life. And at the same time, I feel like, whoa, there's not much going on in my life. And of course, my life won't ever be as exciting as Rob Halford's, but also you're getting that condensed thing in what, like a 15-hour or 12-hour listen total. 12-hour listen. In 12 hours, you get condensed down all the drama of his life, which was certainly very dramatic and certainly extremely Spinal Tap-ish. I couldn't believe when he met the Queen of England, at some kind of reception for British musicians. By the time he was quite famous, but she didn't know who he is, of course. And she asked him, well, what type of music do you do? And he said heavy metal. And she kind of like tried to hold herself back or something in her disgust or whatever. And then she just, oh, that's nice, but why do they have to play that so loud? And he replied to the Queen, because we need it that loud to do the head banging. And then near the end, he mentions that he has trademarked the term metal god, which I also thought was so Spinal Tap-ish. But there's 101 Spinal Tap moments in Rob Halford's life, but also a huge amount of drama and, his first big love committing suicide. I don't know. It's a very powerful book, I thought. If you're interested in heavy metal, it's also very interesting. Let's see. So, and of course, there's the podcast of our own that me and Matt do, Never Stay Dead, which we've been recording a lot for, but I am, along with being behind on comics, I'm way behind on the editing. We are working our way through Planetary. We're doing 1 issue, 2 issues, possibly 3 issues an episode. So there's going to be a lot of episodes. It'll be easy for people who want to reread Planetary or read it for the first time to read along. We have three episodes in the can. I think we're going to do 1 more before anything gets published out there, because I haven't even finished editing episode number 1. Doing a little editing of my own makes me realize why my wife is so busy and how long it takes to edit podcasts. I am loving rereading Planetary, and the truth is I never finished it because of its odd publishing schedule, and I've had this omnibus for a long time and haven't gotten around to it. So the podcast is a great way to get me to do that. And in fact, I was running errands today, and I stopped by Excalibur Comics, which is right on the walk I go to this vegetable stand, and then coming back from the vegetable stand, there's Excalibur Comics right there. So I had to go in, and I used to read Planetary in paperback trades and then a few floppies. So now I'm filling out my entire Planetary collection. So I picked up a bunch of issues of Planetary. Just love the covers. Everyone's so different. There's issue 16. That was issue 18. Almost looks like what Rob Halford looks like these days. This is going backwards. This is issue 17, evoking a little Tarzan action there. And no, that wasn't 18. I guess that was 17. And this is 18, which evokes the like the Penny Dreadfuls or something, the really early before pulps kind of pulp fiction kind of stories before the turn of the century. This looks like a very sleek kind of modern sci-fi cover. That's issue number 19. And it's hard to find the issue numbers. Issue 20. I'm not sure what that's evoking, but it's very cosmic looking. Maybe also kind of a hard sci-fi. Here is issue number 6, which we're gonna be recording soon. Our next episode will probably be discussing 6, 7, and 8. The next one we record. The first episode will just be issue 1, and we talk about that for a long time. There's issue number 9. What is that? It's like a I'm not sure what that's evoking. Maybe a band poster or something. So that was the main reason I gave as my excuse to myself for going into the shop. But then I just was randomly looking for Marvel black and white magazines I don't have. And they don't have a lot of... They're pretty picked clean. But they have this Marvel preview about Sherlock Holmes, which I don't know if I ever knew existed before. A Marvel version of Sherlock Holmes. I'm secretly hoping John Buscema will be the artist, but I doubt it. There is this like one-shot Merlin that he did for one of these magazines. It looks like it's Val Mayrick and Tony DeZuniga. Val Mayrick drawing Sherlock Holmes. That wouldn't be my first thought of who to draw Sherlock Holmes, but he's a great artist, and I'm excited to have some more work by him. So we'll see how that goes. I'm a big Sherlock Holmes fan. And I picked up a Will Eisner's Quarterly that I didn't already have. This one's very thin. I hope it has all the pages in it. It's issue number 8. I think this might be the final quarterly, so maybe that's... Wow, it's really thin, though. Huh. Well, we'll see when I open it up. So, yeah, he usually put a lot of interviews, a little bit of spirit work, and serializations of his new graphic novels in these. And even though I already had it for only $2, I just had to grab issue 1 of Will Eisner's Quarterly again. Either I'll hoard it or I'll give it as a gift someday to somebody. And then I noticed also for like $2 a piece, they had a whole bunch of this strip magazine that Marvel put out to publish European comics. And I have some of the issues, so I just found some random issues that I didn't have yet. This is issue 14, and it looks like they're going to have that Storm is in here. So that's a very hard to find in America comic strip, is Storm by, what's the name of that British artist? Do they mention his name here? I'm mad at myself for not remembering his name at the moment. There's this whole thing of when you're on camera, your memory is worse. Here's issue 6. Looks like there's some martial law. Oh, Don Lawrence. There's Storm by Don Lawrence in here. Don Lawrence was this amazing comic book artist who did everything painted. I guess he kind of hated being published in the United States, so still hard to get his stuff in the U.S. Yeah, so that is issue number 7. So I think maybe like Heavy Metal, it kind of has a few pages of each story, each issue. Well, this one has the Punisher on the cover. That's funny. Issue number 16. Maybe they were trying to pump up sales. Obviously, strip didn't last very long, and very few people know about it. It doesn't really have the Marvel logo on the cover, but I know it was published by Marvel. There's an ad for Epic on the back. And obviously, if they have the Punisher in here free Punisher TM Skull Insignia Sew On patch. And then Last Gasps Young Lust, published in a magazine size here. Kind of the early issues, kind of famous and infamous Underground Comics, but I don't know if anyone cared by issue number 6. Looks like a cover by Bill Griffith, the artist and writer of Ziggy the Pinhead. And finally, an issue that I don't have of Bizarre Adventures, which I always thought was a weird name. I mean, how bizarre are the adventures in here? We've got some Black Widow, some, what were they called? Daughters of the Dragon. Oh, and someone called Lady Demon. I don't know who she is. But Paul Galassi art, Chris Claremont, Michael Golden, Marshall Rogers. So can't go wrong with that, right? That was a whole $5, as much as a modern comic. So that's fun, but the dangers of living near so many comic book stores. Oh, well, I'm making confessions of too much buying of stuff. I was in the department store buying some school supplies for my daughter, some binders and such, and folders, and they had this Marvel 16-month calendar. So I thought, well, I don't want a calendar for January yet. It's too soon to think about that. But 16 months, I'll have stuff for myself now. But they actually don't do individual pages for those first 4 months. It's all on one page. And it's a weirdly laid out calendar in terms of the way the pages are done. But it's certainly full of good old Bronze Age material that I like. But I don't know, it's kind of an ugly layout with they're trying to cram as much in as possible, I guess. They have good taste in the comics they feature. That's what a whole page looks like. So obviously, I mean, this stuff lives on, at your local department store. Even though the world is only watching Marvel movies and not buying the comics, they're probably buying the calendars and seeing all this old art. I probably have about half of these issues that they're showing here. Not sure if I have that issue. I guess September will be Hulk month next year. October will be Spider-Woman month next year. November, Venom. Oh, that's the most modern comic they've had here. And Iron Man month. Iron Man will close out the year in December. And then it will be on to 2023. So I have to put this up somewhere where it won't bother my wife. When I was at the comic book store on Wednesday, today's Friday as I record this, I picked up two comics that were two graphic novels that were kind of smaller than comic book size. I'm not sure why, but one is, I think, the first 3 issues of the webcomic Friday that Ed Brubaker and Marcos Martin are doing on, what's that website called, where Private Eye was and others. Probably says somewhere here. I can't find it. Anyway, it was originally on that website where you pay what you want to for what these pros put out. Interesting looking stuff. I'm guessing the colors might have looked better on the screen, but that's almost always true anyway. But this was done originally for, in theory, web only. And then I picked up this other thing that I know nothing about. Unreadable title there. Can you read that title? But you can read it on the side here. It is called Everything is Super. And I just flipped through it at the store, and I kind of like the art style. It's felt a little, I don't know, a little European or something. I don't like those square those square word balloons. And the smallness of the print does make me think it wasn't originally meant to be printed at this smaller size. But anyway, I think it's about a world where everyone has superpowers, but obviously with a different approach than Top 10 by Alan Moore. So I'm looking forward to digging into this and seeing what it's like. So, I think, I suspect I will return to doing the comic book countdown, but I don't know. It suddenly, the problem was getting 16 comics, and I knew that was a bit more than I could easily read during a week, with other things going on in my life and other things I'm reading, like Planetary, and so because I knew that, I knew I wasn't going to make it, so to speak, and because I've kind of centered my comic book reading of new comics around the idea of doing these countdowns, which I've loved doing, and I've loved keeping up with the weekly comics. But once I realized I wasn't going to make it, I put off reading them even more, so I actually read less comics that week than I would have. I kept seeing the pile of comics and saying, I'll tackle that later. And then when I picked up 16 more comics this week, it's like, oh crap, that's happening all over again. So I'm not. I want to catch up, and I'm not sure what I'll do. But I think for a while I will. I'll just talk about a few highlights here and there. Maybe I'll do them all in a vlog-like setting like this, or maybe not. We'll see what I feel like doing and what what I have time doing. I'm realizing that I've approached comic book reading in different ways over the years. At some points, only reading trades. I'm trying to do a mix of, buying really nice hardbacks and omnibuses and things, and reading floppies. But the floppy really suits the way my mind works. I'm a reading butterfly. When I read novels, I have tons of unfinished novels. And I usually, when I'm reading a lot of novels, have 4 or 5 or 6 that I'm reading. I skip around to them. So having new comics weekly and always feeling like a butterfly jumping from comic to comic, but having over the months the stories coming to an end, it just fits very well, that kind of butterfly style of reading, flitting from flower to flower, flitting from comic book to comic book. On the other hand, there's something really satisfying about a really nice hardback. I'm not that satisfied by all my comics sitting in boxes. It is cool when, like, I was hanging out with Bueller and John and Sam last Wednesday, and Bueller was telling us about all these comics that have gone up in value, modern comics. And I'm like, oh, I have that one. Ones that just came out in the last year or two. I have that one, I have that one, I have that one. It was kind of cool to think, oh, if I were to slab that comic, it would be worth $100. Not that I'm ever going to do it, but it's kind of fun. And also, well, like in the most extreme, there are a lot of comics that feel better when you have a laid out flat version of them. So in that sense, it's a better reading experience. So anyway, I'm always flip-flopping back. Like I said, I'm a butterfly. So I suspect I will return to, I don't know, I don't have to do it as a countdown. But I do kind of like recording for my own self my thoughts on every single comic I read, which is impossible because there's actually a lot of other comics I read that I don't talk about, but at least counting down the new comics gave me that. But if you have any thoughts of whether you like it in a countdown or just go through all your comics and don't rank them, that's fine. I did get that past, I guess now 2 Wednesdays ago, the new House of Slaughter. I was the only one I know who didn't get the shiny cover. I read it and I thought, oh, this has a really great ending, in the sense that it set me up to really want the rest of the story. But it kind of had a uneven pace and sort of confusing timeline going forward, and maybe I'm not caught up because I'm reading in trades with all the something is killing the children. In fact, I'm probably way behind the people who are reading the single issues. So there may have been stuff that I would have found easier to digest if I was fully up on all that. But then I realized it's not really written by James Tynion. He's a co-plotter, and that's about it. So I don't. It's funny that they had that blank cover. So I don't know anything about Bramble. I can't recall reading other comics by him. Tate Bramble. Is he a really experienced comic book writer? Is he a friend of James Tynion or someone that James Tynion picked up in a class, like he was picked up by Snyder and decided this person was really promising? Oblivion is a beautiful comic, one I'm happy that I'm ended up deciding to keep getting in individual issues because of the art and the way you can take it in a comic book, as opposed to a paperback trade, which is what I was going to switch to. But I definitely have to reread it because I'm losing track of who all the characters are. That's been an ongoing problem, and it's getting worse. Maybe was there a gap in time between issue 33 and 34? That might be part of it. And we're just getting to the big climax. Man, is this good art, though. Ice Cream Man was really good, but it didn't quite get to me. Like, I felt distanced from it and more aware of the gimmick and the sense that the writer was using the gimmick to kind of tell rather than show. So I just didn't experience this comic as viscerally as others. But also, I don't have a lot of personal experience with addiction. I had some roommates who were cocaine addicts in my 20s, but I wasn't very close to them. So I think maybe people who have more personal addiction issues with addiction in their family or friends may have gotten more out of this than me. But still, I mean, always cool, always innovative. Ice Cream Man was great. The big surprise actually for that week of comics was Gunslinger Spawn. I loved this cover, and I, especially because I was hanging out with Travis and he was hyping it up. I grabbed an issue and number one just to try the number one, and I actually liked it quite a bit. And this is the best I've ever liked Brett Booth artwork. That means I need to go and pick up my daughter. So I think I may be picking up more Gunslinger Spawn. I love the concept anyway. I like the cowboy Spawn, or the Gunslinger Spawn. It's quite cool. And although McFarlane's writing was a little awkward at times, it was actually much better than I've experienced in other comics. So we'll see if Gunslinger Spawn continues to tickle my fancy, but I think I'm on this for a while. Made in Korea was quite good. I think there's only one more issue. Hellcop surprised me. I guess is this a continuation of a comic from the 90s? I'm not. At first I thought I wouldn't like it. I got it. I pre-ordered it, I think just because of the name Hellcop, because I like stories about hell. And this is super, super Photoshoppy art. Everything looks sort of artificial and posed, like it was done with some kind of, even the parts that aren't like photographs or digitally created things. I feel like maybe the artist used some kind of poser app, poser software or something like that. I don't know, but everything just looked odd. But it had a lot of cool stuff with this dimension hopping, and a dimension that has all kinds of our myths about hell as part of its reality. So I'm kind of glad I put that on my pull. I'm looking forward to more than that. Vinyl, more of the same. I just don't know what's going on. It's just crazy. If I understand what the plot is, that seems crazy anyway. A bunch of serial killers rescuing an FBI agent. To what end? I don't know. It is wacky and weird. I think I will try reread it all I think next issue will be the final issue. So that kind of covers the highlights of those 16 comics I read from 2 Wednesdays ago. And I will be back soon in some form or another. I'm going to be doing a live video on Sunday on my channel with Rasa. I think Terrence, Comic Crack, won't be able to make it. Although you never know. Sometimes his schedule changes. But I think there's an important birthday in his family or something. And possibly the comic board will be back. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, there'll be some kind of live conversation Sunday, midday my time, 11 a.m. my time on the West Coast. So, or maybe 11:30. So I hope you're all having a good comic book week, and I'll talk with you some more later.